Excellent. We are live. Welcome, everybody, to this wonderful interview. And we have a special guest, and his name's Jamie. And Jamie and I actually met at the AJC Coaching Career School Live event. Jamie, I imagine you remember this because it wasn't too long ago, but I just really appreciate who you are and the way you show up, because I remember there was a breakout session or breakout moment, and we partnered up with people, and however it worked out, I found myself walking around looking for a partner, and you popped up from the back and said, "Hey, I'll partner with you." So thank you for just who you are and the way that you show up. But so everybody knows, could you just tell them who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Jamie Damsker, and not surprising to your intended audience, I'm a leadership and performance coach and a keynote speaker. As importantly, I'm a husband. I'm a father of two magnificent boys, and I'm the owner of a herd of three dogs. So
Wow.
that's who I am. And yet, James, I do remember us speaking. In fact, I had just arrived probably 15 minutes prior into the room. I just gotten to London and I was really focused on, I was there for another gathering that evening. And the opportunity to get to know the people in the room and like just right place, right time, which is sort of thematic in my life. And there you were. And we had what I consider to be, at least for me, a really meaningful and tender conversation. And I thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you. That was my experience as well. Um, and I love that you have the three dogs and your family. I see your posts around your dogs and different things like that, and I love it. The intention here today is this conversation around for coaches. How do you generate conversations and create clients? And I come to it from a little bit of a different context, because I think sometimes, and the answers may still be very similar, but I found that a lot of the material I find online is people just starting out. But I've also found that even coaches who have been at it for a bit, sometimes they find themselves in this moment where they're going, okay, what can I do to generate conversations? Or what's a step that I could take to connect with more people? And so I'd love to open up and start with that idea of, yeah, just kind of your take or what you found most helpful for yourself. I know it's a broad question, but I think it's good to start there.
Yeah, it's likely a top of mind question for a lot of people who would be watching this. And I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And I am fortunate in that, and this is useful in my coaching as well, that I have made every mistake and blunder that you could. There might be more, and I'll find them eventually, um, including this idea of building a coaching practice and enrolling clients. And I see, so I can say this, and it takes work to take it on. And what I'm going to say right now, and there are times when even I can fall asleep to it. And that is, generating conversations is easy. When I assign something to it, like generating conversations to create a client, man, I put some serious constraints on myself.
Mm.
Like, now, practically speaking, and this is valid. Well, look, I'm a coach. I'm in the coaching business. I want to have conversations to create enrollment conversations to create clients. Yes, I want to serve people, and also I want to put food on the table and pay my bills. Like, it's a business, and I find it unique, at least in the different work that I've done in my life, even outside of coaching. And it can sound very counterintuitive, But when I come home to this, I realize that it's the only way. The only way if you really want to flourish in this work. And that is there's an element of faith, which can sound a bit anathema to processes and systems. And I'm not suggesting it's an either or. I just would offer, I would lead with this. And what I mean by faith is faith that there's what, 8.5, 9 billion people on this planet. And while I would say that most of them, the vast majority, will never hire a coach, there are enough of them out there that once they discover a possibility through working with a coach, they're going to invest in themselves, whatever that looks like to them, to do that. Like I don't say it like that's possibly true. I say it like it's accurate for me. And that propels me and has me through faith, knowing that if I create conversations with people, sometimes it's intentional, like there's someone who I've discovered in the world, and I'm going to reach out to them given certain conditions about them, or someone through someone I know is going to connect me and say, hey, Jamie, here's a person I think would be served by being in conversation with you. I'm really convicted, James, that if I bring myself from that place in service, and I'll say more about what that means to me, it will serve the person. And if I don't attach to it an outcome of them being a client, I will show up in a way that just might have them desire to be a client. And that could sound counterintuitive. If someone is in sales, that could be traditional sales where you sell a product or service. That could be a little bit challenging to wrap your head around. And I would say, even if not, because there's this pressure, self-imposed, reasonable, that can look like I've got to generate clients to make money. And therefore, I have to be intentional about creating a client. And I'm suggesting, in response to your question, through faith in who I'm being, me looking to generate conversations from a place of authentically wanting to discover something about that human being over there, with no desired outcome beyond that, it sometimes just works itself into a conversation where they would ask a question like, what is it you do? I've been in conversations with people. We've gone an hour. This is not often. This is a bit of an anomaly, but to me, it makes my point. I've been with a founder of a company not too long ago. It's just the one at top of mind. And we talked about him and his business and the history of his work and his family. And we got to 55 minutes of our hour together. And he stopped in the middle of a sentence. And he looked at me across the table in this meeting room and he said, what do you do? And that question didn't come from he just had a thought, he doesn't know what I do. I know where it came from. It came from the experience I gave him of me, just like I could have spent the whole time talking about him. And there was nothing inside of me that was screaming, tell him what you do, look for the opening, tell him what you do. And lo and behold, he asked the question he did. And I answered however I answered it to him. And I could see dots getting connected in his head. Like he said something like, oh, well, that explains the questions you asked me. If I promise you, James, if I walked in there knowing that the outcome that I want is he's going to want to talk to me about coaching, I would have showed up differently. I'm not that good. I can't fool myself or him. I can't fake it. And it likely would not have ended the way it did, which was, again, an invitation when he connected those dots for us to have another conversation. And this time, there's a bit of more intentionality about him looking at whatever we talk about through the lens of what would his life be like if I was in it more, or
Mm.
someone who's a coach is in it more. So let me pause, take a breath, and ask if anything I've just said creates another question or a thought or an idea.
Oh, so many. I love this. This is great, and I really appreciate the way that you're illuminating this and this idea of faith, because I myself, and I think a lot of people can be very logical, right? Like you said, and have those valid reasons of, oh, I'd like to create a client, and the way to do that is through conversation. So I really love that you're inserting this idea of faith, and it sounds like from what you're saying, it's almost faith in yourself. I think is what I heard you say, in just who you're being, in the way that you're showing up with people. And in my experience and what I've witnessed, it's almost as though when people enter coaching, or even before coaching, they're very helpful people. They're actually in a lot of conversations, helping people. They're very much making a difference for people. And somewhere, this idea of, I could become a coach, I could do this professionally. And then it's almost as though, this idea of helping people, of it perhaps not being paid because it's just who they are. And then this idea of being paid for it. And what I'm hearing is kind of detaching that idea of uh, creating or generating conversations to create clients. Instead, actually get back to generating conversations, kind of drop that idea of it has to be for a client, and having that faith that in yourself of who you are, the person who helps people, um, your profession will illuminate, or the conversation will naturally occur in such a way that the person will be going, you know, what is it that you do? Or they'll start thinking about, how would my life be different if this person was in it? That's what I'm getting from what you're saying, and I've yeah. Let me pause there and see how's this lining up based on what you just shared. Um, any gaps that you might want to fill in for me, or am I getting it right?
Well, I love what you said. Let me throw a bone to anyone who might be stuck in this idea of, but I'm in this to make money. I want to serve them, but both. And so I think this might help. I never forget who I am or what moves me through the world. Like, I'm a coach. And why I say that is those conversations where I'm looking to serve the person and learn about them, I'm awake to what I just described to you, which is a distinction of who I'm not coaching them, but I'm always being a coach. And what that looks like is I'm not having a casual conversation. We're not talking about the weather. I mean, it could come up, but I won't dwell on it. I'm not talking about the what we had for lunch or where they're going on vacation. Like, I want to discover that sometimes, but I'm looking to create a conversation that's an uncommon conversation. And that comes through me in the questions I ask. This idea of faith and boldness, which could have me, to use a term that I know that has become very much in favor through Unkish, which is 10 out of 10 listening. When I ask a question and I'm being listening in their response, I'm not looking to necessarily keep it superficial. That we have a tendency in polite society to have superficial conversations. It's a default. It's there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm looking for an opportunity through listening to take it deeper. And I don't mean deeper on my terms. See, if it's on my terms, it's me looking for an opening to wow them with what a great coach I am. And I'll ask a question that might land effectively, but I don't like the odds. I'm talking about, James, me being bold and asking them a question within the context of what they just shared that goes deeper in that. And if I'm measuring it based upon, will that bring me closer or further away from them asking what I do or coaching, I'm mucking it all up. Like
Mhm.
the only thing that's getting in the way of me creating a flourishing coaching practice right there is me. That's the good news. So that's what I would share in contribution to your response. And I loved everything you said.
Right. Wow. I love this, and that, yeah, that represents my experience as well. Right? Is this conversations can be very superficial, and I love this idea of boldness that you're sharing, and so I'm curious. My question for you is: it sounds like, so you're a coach. You're showing up. It sounds like that's the is that part of the thing that you love to do, is ask the bold question. I'm curious on the what keeps you, if your attention isn't on the I'm doing this to create a client or any of those things, there's something in it that you're finding some joy in, right? And sometimes when I speak with people, they talk about getting to know the person, and I think when I've heard that before, I kind of heard it through the context of perhaps superficial conversation, but it almost sounds like there's something in this boldness that's a bit exciting to ask someone. Do I have that right?
Yes, if I heard you correctly, yes. And we have an. You tell me if this is being responsive or not. It's a thought that's in my head. It occurs to me as responsive, but if it's 90 degrees off, you let me know, James. There are things that we can do to create conditions that raise the odds of having a conversation deeper than superficial. And I said when we first started talking that I've made all the mistakes, and I love sharing them, both with other coaches and also with clients if it's relevant to what they are going through, what we're discussing. There was a time where I would have or attempt to have a deep conversation anywhere. Like I would meet someone at an event, there'd be a crowd around, and I would be more than happy to jump into a conversation right there. And I don't do that anymore. Like I'm not, I take a stand for the other person. Like if I'm going to be with them and create an opening or create access for them of themselves to share something really meaningful and deep, we're not competing with the din of the crowd around us or the server at the table having food or having a conversation while we're driving. Like I'm really clear that I want to be a demonstration of how important they are. And I don't even know them yet.
Mm.
And I would do that by saying, I've met people at events and oh, what do you do? And oh, let's have a conversation. And I've politely and through serving them and boldly cut it off. Like, hey, as an example, I would love to continue this conversation about whatever they brought up. And it's too important to do it here. And we could walk away somewhere or we could create time together. And if they're open to doing that, and some people aren't, that's fine. But if they're open to doing that, I'm also going to begin to set the stage for how I would ask them to show up to that conversation. And, it could look like, and it's different for everyone, James, it could look like, hey, would you please consider spend some time before we're together to spend 10 or 15 minutes, just be quiet with yourself and think about what is it that you'd want to bring to our conversation that can really serve you. Now, I'm really clear there's not many people who are going to start a conversation that way. And you could call that bold. It's not bold to me anymore. And what could get in the way is of a coach doing that could be, man, what's this person going to think of me? What if they think that's weird? I tell someone, look, if we're going to meet at a certain time, I'm going to create an agreement with them that looks like if we say we're going to meet at 10 a.m., that's not 10:01. And I'll be with them in a way that create that so that no one has probably ever said that to them before. If they happen to be there at 10, that's fine. And I'm sharing that as simply a symptom of how I show up to people in a conversation, even the creation of a conversation that will contribute to, I'll call it a little bit of foreshadowing of what the conversation could be like. And I don't know where we're going to go in the conversation. It's another thing that I find exciting about them. To your point you made just a few minutes ago, I get excited because, yeah, I may consider myself a bit of a Sherpa, but I'm not a tour guide, so to speak. We don't have the recordings they're going to listen to while I'm taking them to point A, point B, and point C. That's now about me. We're going to go where they want to go. Now, I'll put some boundaries, meaning I won't allow it to just kind of run on superficially. Like I do that for me and them. I respect their time and mine, and I can do that lovingly and bring us back or ask another question that could stop them and have them think about something in a way that has us go deeper. So I feel complete in my response to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, yeah, it's funny. I don't have any questions on it. It's so you're so clear with that, right? That um, the difference between the superficial and the deep, and where that's appropriate, and the way in which that you approach that transition. I also love, and thank you for bringing it back to that, of what's the part that's exciting for you, which I think is really neat. Um, you had me curious. If there's more that you want to say on that, let me know. You had me curious because I know before you mentioned you wanted to talk about a bit of the context of service, and what that meant to you.
Yeah, I kind of tipped the bucket on it a few minutes ago, but I'll be more explicit. This idea of the Sherpa versus the tour guide, if you want to see it as a distinction, there are always there's always an opportunity to be a tour guide. There's certain context, not likely in these type of opening conversations we're talking about, where being more of a tour guide and knowing that point A, point B, and point C will get us to an outcome of D, and that can be useful for people. I don't find that useful. I don't consider that service in the context of being with someone to create conversations that could resolve themselves into enrollment conversations for coaching. So to me, what service looks like is me getting out of the way, me almost disappearing in the conversation in a way that has like, hey, I'm really big on analogies if you haven't started to pick that up. So if you're in car sales and someone walks in the lot on the lot, until you start speaking to them, you don't know what they want, but you've got 150 cars of inventory behind you. And eventually, as they speak, you're going to start to, in your mind, resolve that 150 down to maybe 3 or 2 or even 1 if they're that explicit. I see this like, if you want to use the car analogy, if there's, I forget the number, let's say there's 8.5 billion people on the planet. I've got an inventory of 8.5 billion cars. Like, really. And if, as I see someone walking on the lot, I'm starting to think about the 20 that might fit them, odds are that's a swing and a miss. Like, that's now about me selling them the car. And I'm suggesting service looks like, to back to the Sherpa analogy, they came to me and they want to climb a mountain. Okay, which mountain? And I will guide them, but I'm not going to climb for them. And service in that looks like asking the powerful, deep questions that has them actually discover the car on the lot themselves. And the experience I give them is not that I took them by the nose and said, here's your car. No, the experience I want to give them, this is, again, is in the domain or in the context of service, James, is they have an experience that I simply was a Sherpa and they found the car. Now, if I'm effective at that, and this is where the car analogy has to blow up a bit or it doesn't work anymore. This is where you want to see the miracle of transitioning from a deep conversation to an enrollment conversation. This is where that person, through that experience, can say to themselves, man, if James can be with me in a way that has me discover the right car for me, dude, what if James was in my life and when I needed to discover, the right house, the right appliances, and if I translate that to real life and we leave this analogy I used, it's like, man, James, through the questions he asked, helped me discover for myself why my job isn't fulfilling. Man, what if I was able to bring that awakeness to myself, to my marriage, or to me being a parent, or to my health, or to my spirituality, or to my friendship, or to any domain that's important to me? And those are just as unique as the 8.5 billion cars. Everyone's got different domains in their life that are important to them. Service to me, James, to put a fine point on it, looks like I don't have a script. I don't have a preconceived idea of what's important to them. Now, what I do know, where there is a common thread in coaching, in my experience of coaching, is after a while, the things that get in people's way tend to start to be the same things. But I don't confuse those two things. What's in the way and the things they desire. If I start to tell them the things they desire, that's when you see on social media, these people will say, come work with me and I will help you work smarter, not harder. Or I will help you find the right spouse, or whatever it happens to be. And I would never do that, because that's, again, me saying, I know the right car for you. To me, that's not service of them, that's service of me. Yeah, that's what I want to say about service.
Yeah. And I imagine, as somebody's listening to this, and there's this idea of dropping the generating conversations to get clients, really being of service. There's the being bold or building depth over superficial conversations. If someone is wanting to get out there and do this, is there anything that you found most helpful for yourself, or you would recommend for them to, I guess as I'm asking the question, I think dropping a lot of those pretexts, right, of doing it to need to get a client, I think probably opens up a lot for them. And so I'm curious, where have you found, where have conversations occurred for you that, that things just opened up? Because I guess I'm picturing, there's some people who might be working a part-time job. There's, some people have a full practice and they're still expanding. So yeah, I'm curious where you have found these spaces or pockets that kind of helped you get out, or connect with more people.
Yeah. The short answer is it's so varied, like so varied. And I'll talk about my own personal experiences. I know highly successful coaches who've begun by finding a focus industry. And one gentleman in particular, and I'll keep it generic, who found an industry that he knew something about and he wanted to work with the top performers in that industry. And he found reports and lists that talk about who the top ones in this case in the country, in the United States. And he reached out to him. And at a certain point, he created masterminds to begin with to bring them together. And eventually that resolved itself. Not that the mastermind wasn't an ends unto itself, in where he started getting a reputation. He started working with some of these top performers, and years went by, and there wasn't a top performer, I don't think, who didn't at least consider working with him. And credibility in that industry could have him easily reach out, and he's got data points to show that he's really good at what he does with people in an industry. And that's one way to do it. Going to events. I mean, like just leaving your house and going to events. Everyone likely in their own communities has business events, or they know people who either have events that they're at, or they even in social circles, James. I would say, like, for myself, I've met people sitting on an airplane, and it's generated a conversation. And sometimes those conversations generate something more. There's been people I know because I've given them an experience of me, not coaching them, but I'm always being a coach, who would reach out and say, hey, listen, I've got this person I know, and they said something to me and it made me think of you. Can I connect you? Or a client. Sometimes a client will proactively say, hey, can I introduce you to someone? And there are times I'll say to clients, look, if there's anyone in your world who you think of who could be served by a relationship or a conversation like you and I have, like, introduce them. And they do. And there are times, James, even when I'll learn about someone either through the news or social media, and I'll reach out to them. I did that just last week. Someone was appointed as the CEO of a company you would know if I said it, and I won't say it. And I reached out to this person, and I through LinkedIn, through a message on LinkedIn, and I congratulated them on the role, and I said a few things, and I extended an offer to have a conversation with them. Simply a conversation. I made some promises in that in the offer, like, I'll make you a promise, something like this. These aren't the exact words, but it comes through me. It comes through me because I hold it as accurate. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it. And I said something to him. It's a man, like, I can promise you we'll create something in this conversation that will serve you. And that's all I said. I actually got a response from him this morning, and he thanked me, and he said, Jamie, I already have a coach, and this person's amazing. So that works for me, and let me know if I can do anything for you. Well, I'm also a speaker. Not that that's outside the scope of this conversation, but what I speak about is about leadership and performance and neuroscience and other things. So they're connected. Well, I now have a contact with this person. I'm gonna keep that contact going. First, you can count on I'm gonna respond and acknowledge him. I love he has a coach. I'm not surprised he has a coach, given where he's reached in his professional career. And I could not be happier for him that he's with a coach he loves. You want to talk about this compersion idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? To me, if I had any feelings about it besides what I just said, like something like, I could be really clever. Oh yeah, but look, if it ever doesn't work out, or tell me more about it, like, looking for weak spots in his coaching relationship, man, he would sniff that out. Not only that, but it wouldn't serve me. And I may never hear from him again after I respond, but I don't care about that. I'm simply looking to be service, and acknowledgement to me lives inside of service. Um, I want to make sure I'm complete in my response to you. Well, let me pause and ask: is that responsive to the question?
Yes, I think it's very responsive, because really what I'm uh, getting is, in order to connect with people, and you have to get out the door, right? Or you have to even get out of the the digital door, right? To make people, not make people, but well, yeah, people, for to make people aware of what you're up to, of what you do, to be in conversation with people, to be living your life and doing things, because there's people all around. Um, and I really love what you shared around, the CEO, right? Of you saw something and you took an action on that, of sincerely connecting and offering that. And the average person probably would not do that, right? Or if they did do it, it would be from that context of they have to become a client. Whereas it sounds like you're really coming from that place of service, and also that place of faith, to know that something really useful is going to come from that conversation. And that when you show up in conversation with people, um, an experience is had that wouldn't happen through a superficial conversation. So you actually, one of the things that you said that I'd love to have some clarity around is, you said, when I show up, I don't coach, but I show up as a coach. Could you tell me? I don't know if those were the exact words you said, but something along those lines of, you're still a coach, so you show up as a coach even if you're not coaching. Could you tell me what the distinction is there?
Yes. And what will matter in the distinction to every individual who's a coach who's watching this is their relationship with themselves as a coach. And I could see, if you're not careful, there is no distinction between being a coach and coaching. And to me, if there's no daylight for someone in those two, it's something to really look at. And I'll put an and to that. If there's no distinction between the two for you, and you feel like you're struggling to create your coaching practice, I would encourage you to look there. And so I'll share what that means to me. And I don't say it like this is the way it needs to be, James. I say it like this is the stand I take for it. I don't have a relationship with coaching, with me as a coach. I want to be accurate. Like it's a job. It's literally who I'm being. And again, this rapidly gets to, well, it depends on your relation with being a coach. There are people who are business coaches. There are people who call themselves life coaches, health coaches. That will instruct your relationship with being a coach. For me, it's so much bigger than that. Like, I've been blessed to work with some of the best coaches on the planet. Like, I've invested heavily in myself to work with these people, and there's been a consistent theme. They see coaching, being a coach, as perhaps the most sacred, important job on the planet. And I really see that too. It's my role, if I'm being effective, and I use some of this language when I used my service analogy, or my story or explanation about what service means to me. I, as a coach, if I'm being effective, even when I'm not coaching, I'm being a coach, I could be with someone to give them access to something in themselves that could create an opening for them, like literally burst open an opening to completely transform their life. That's not insignificant. Like, that's the whole enchilada, brother. That's everything. I sort of say this a little bit tongue in cheek. Yeah, we're just talking about your life. Nothing big. We're talking about your life. Like, if someone would say, can we have this conversation while I'm driving? And I've had that in the past. Well, look, I'm going to be between point A and B. The only time I have the conversation when I'm driving. And look, I'll let context instruct my response. I'm not saying I've never had conversations with people while they're driving, but there's a certain point where I won't do it. And I may say something which could sound kind of cheeky. I don't mean it to be, but I guess I do. Yeah, we can if you want. If you want us talking about your life to be competing with you, looking at your speed limit, making sure you can change lanes, then we can do that. And I'll just let them sit with it for a second. And, just like with the car, I'll let them lead themselves to the answer. And to me, that's really useful. So for me, the distinction is I'm always being that person. It goes right to the heart of what has you and I talking, which is how do you create conversations? I desire to create them not to coach. I desire to create them because I'm being a coach. And sometimes it leads to a relationship that has me coach them. Let me be more accurate. There are times when, with their permission, even before there's a formal relationship, that's what has me want to correct myself. I will coach them. I will serve them. I will, to use a great Steve Chandler expression, client astonishment. And they're not a client. I'll call it human being astonishment. I've committed to having spouse astonishment for my wife. Same thing. So that's me being a coach. And at a certain point, with their permission, I will coach them. So this never disappears, this being a coach. I'm always, unless I fall asleep to it, which I can. And I'll see those red flags and I'll wake up. It's fine. But I'm always being a coach, and there's an opportunity to coach someone. Now, when I can bring those together, miracles happen. But if I'm walking around like those must be together, I'm not bringing all of me. Like, I now have a desired outcome. You go all the way back to our conversation about, how do I have effective conversations? Those are separate. Sometimes I could be this really well, and this never happens. Or someone may say, like the gentleman on the LinkedIn message, I was being a coach in my message to him, and I'm not coaching him. And he's ecstatic with his coach. Unless that changes, those will never come together. I'm so good with that. But every time I interact with him, I'm always being that. And if I put conditions on it, like, well, they're only going to get that. If I see an opening for that, well, you get what you get. And what you get, to me, is not very fulfilling. Is that responsive?
Yeah, that's very, very responsive. And I love the way that you distinguish between the two, especially because, yeah, I think there can be those moments for people where they aren't quite they haven't quite familiarized how to separate the two. So I love that you say that that's one of the first places to look, and especially this idea, right, that coaching is so much bigger than whether it's business coaching or any specific field, that it's a human being in front of us, and so much magic can happen, so much can be blown open. And yeah, you have me curious around, because I imagine I'm curious on this balance that you have. You work with businesses, in different capacities. You speak. I know sometimes in coaching and in business, it's kind of, I know Steve Chandler he tells the story of the guy who says, "Oh, you need a niche." It's pronounced quiche, or pronounced like quiche. So a lot of times people are looking for a niche, or they feel like they need the single thing that's their specialty. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm curious what your approach is like. What I'm hearing is, it sounds like you really value the human in front of you, as opposed to thinking about it as, I'm helping a specific industry. Is that right? I got the sense from your analogies and from what I saw around your speaking, that you speak for a lot of different types of businesses. So there isn't necessarily one industry. So I guess to clarify, my question is, how do you have that personal balance between being a coach, doing the thing that you love, helping many different industries?
Is the question, I think I heard your question. Is the question, James, how can I coach someone who's the CEO of a widget company and coach someone who's the CEO of a professional services company, like different industries? Is that the question?
I'm going to say yes, and while still having that faith that an amazing conversation is going to happen regardless. Does
That's
that
a
make sense?
that's a great question. I'm going to turn it around for a moment.
Yeah.
If I have any concerns, or in a way, lack of faith, that I'm going to show up to this conversation with someone who's a leader of an industry or a company I know nothing about. So, how could I be effective? Which is kind of taking what you're saying and reversing it in a way.
Hmm.
Then I've fallen asleep to who I'm being. Like that, I would only have that thought if I have an intention of impressing them. Yeah, now remove faith and add ego. There's the distinction there. Like it goes back to me to the Sherpa and the tour guide distinction. I'm not going to sit with anyone in this capacity as being a coach to tell them how to do their business. Like I'm not a business coach, so to speak. And there are people who do that, like their whole job, or a consultant. Then I'd want to know their business. I don't. I will learn about their business through the questions I ask, through the context. If if they were to share something with me that occurs to me as, man, it would be useful for me to know more specifics, I'll say that. I'll be with them like, hey, what you just said, what would be useful for me would be, can you explain more when you say the empty fritz on the widget, blah blah blah, and that's the problem. Explain to me the empty fritz on the widget. Just give me, don't go into detail, just enough that would give me some context. And two things are occurring there, James. One, I'm getting greater context from them that would increase the chances that the questions I'm asking are useful for them. I'm also giving them an experience of me being committed to them, so much so that I'm willing to say, I don't get that. Can you slow down and say something about it? And more importantly, I am coaching a human being who happens to be the CEO of a widget company, or happens to be an entrepreneur, an athlete, or a physician. I've coached physicians before. I promise you, you don't want me operating on you. Like I promise you, you don't. And I can go be with them to have them get access to something in themselves that contributes to the thing that would have them want to be in a conversation with me. And it could be about their work, but chances are it's something bigger than work, that if they can discover that and get access to it, not only will it create an upgrade in the thing they think they need at work, it'll create an upgrade what's happening in the four walls of their home, what's happening with their health. And I'm not saying everything is a one size fits all. There are some things that can be focused and targeted, but I'm really careful about not getting pulled into that level of detail, because the deeper you go into that detail, for me, the inverse that's happening is the more superficial the conversation's becoming. Is that responsive, or is there still a gap in the question?
Oh, I think that's perfect, because I'm ultimately hearing that if you go into, well, there's so much in there. I love that you called that out, that if that's coming up for someone, right, they may have fallen asleep to who they really are, and as well, knowing the purpose and intention of why you're there. And yes, they may be in different industries, and there's a certain level of context that you need. And I also love what you just shared, if I'm understanding correctly, is if you actually go too detailed into some of those, perhaps things around the business, or certain contexts, it can actually make the conversation superficial, or perhaps it's kind of taking the eye off the prize, or the intention of the work. Do I have that right?
It's more art than science.
Yeah.
There's a there's an opportunity, like you just feel it out given the conditions that you're in that conversation. There are times where more detail is useful, and I always know where I am when I'm there. So if we're going into details, I'm listening for an opening to where the details can break something open for them. And
Mm,
then I will, if I'm being effective as a coach in that conversation and a leader, I'm going to Sherpa us back up to like them. Like I always want to go back to the person in front of me. I we can look at other people, we can look at the conditions, and really I want to go back to them and their experience of themselves in the thing. That to me
wow.
is where the magic happens.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, I want to be respectful of your time. Um, this there's so much goodness in this conversation. Um, so much that is opening up for me that I know will open up for anyone listening in the way that you approach your coaching, the way that you approach conversations. And I really love this, these ideas of faith, of boldness, and also really um, being awake to who one is, because I think it's so easy to get distracted or feel pressures in life, and really to be awake to who they are. Um, as we're winding this down, what would you like to? Is there a message that you'd like to leave anyone listening with?
That feeling that a coach can have when they're getting ready to be bold and they've got that pit in their stomach or that voice that's telling them, don't do it. I want everyone to know, and they may know this, it never goes away. Like it, there's, there's a, I mean, there's a big opening to look at this through neuroscience, and we won't. I'll just leave it with this and ask everyone to extend me trust. There's accuracy in this. The little voice never disappears. The one that demands that you play small. You know, in a business, talking about the business of coaching, where what you're selling is you, there's a big exposure there, James. Like, there's no product, there's no service to hide behind. The rawness is you. That could be daunting. Daunting for a new coach, even daunting for an experienced coach who's looking to create something bigger and bolder. And I'm committed to doing that, which means, in a way, I'm committed to changing my relationship with that little voice in the pit in my stomach, not eliminating it. It'll go away when I'm dead. I believe that. I'm saying changing my relationship with it such that I act in spite of it. And I say that because I don't want anyone to hear me and go back and listen to this like, man, he's got it all figured out. Like that, my ego wants you to believe that, by the way. Like, oh man, Jamie rolls out of bed and he's got 20 phone calls from people they can't throw money at him fast enough. No, I promise you, I wake up in the morning like, man, I just have an opening in my day. Where do I go for a conversation with someone? Like, and the little voice says, who wants to talk to you? There's economic issues, there's political unrest, like people have their own stuff going on. And I remind myself, yes, that's why we can serve them and why it's so important, because the same thoughts that you've got in your head, coach, the people you want to talk to have the same thing. Even the corner office people. If I had $1 for every senior executive I spoke to where I discovered imposter syndrome, or I discovered their relationship with their spouse is a dumpster fire and they're staying one step ahead of all of it and it's exhausting. And you're sitting here thinking to yourself, well, why would they want to talk to little old me? Man, you got to get past that. you're a breath of fresh air for them. I don't care if you're a brand new coach or you've been doing it for 20 years. This work is so important. And the only thing stopping you from doing it boldly is you and those thoughts that for some reason you believe you're the only one who's got them, and you're not. That occurs to me as a useful message given the audience, and it just popped up for me, James. So yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful, and I love it. Um, if somebody was interested in connecting with you or wanted to find more about what you do, what's the best way for them to find you or reach out to you?
Um, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Although on Instagram and Facebook, as you pointed out, you'll probably think that I'm a dog breeder, which I am not. I'm just a dog owner. But most of it's, and I even use my dogs as conduits for meaningful messages I share, because to me, animals live life the way that it's meant to be lived: unconditional love, simplicity. More about that another time. So people can find me on social media. Um, my email address is my name, Jamie at jamiedamsker.com. My website is jamiedamsker.com. I'm a simple person. I keep it simple. I'm very approachable. So yeah, that's what I would say. How people can get in touch with me, and they can probably find me through you, since you have a pretty big following too.
Yeah, excellent. Perfect. And if anyone is looking to reach out to me, jmwhiteman.com is the best way to do that. Thank you so much, Jamie. I appreciate just the heart that you have, the way that you show up, and how you bring so much meaningfulness to the conversations, at least every conversation that I've had with you. So thank you so much, and thank you, everybody, and anyone listening to this. Share your insights, share what came through, so that way Jamie and I both know that these are making a difference. So thank
Excellent
you.
point.
See you guys. Bye.